You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast. After all these years, still the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Inside the Black and Gold. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
Michael House. And this week we have on Terps gymnastics coach Brett Nelligan.
All right, this week we are joined by the head coach of the women's gymnastics team here at Maryland, Brett Nelligan. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. So earlier this week, you heard your team's name called to go to your 8th straight NCAA Regional. Obviously, you've been in that position a lot over the past 8 years, but how does it feel to finally have your team's name called and know where you'll be heading next week?
Yeah, we say it's the best day of the year. You know, and I try to impress upon the team. It's like hearing your name called is something you should never take for granted. We have, seniors who have heard their name for you. We have a 5th year that's heard Maryland called 5 times. And from my first time hearing my name called in 2010 to now, I think we've made it, 14, 15 times. It's like, it never gets old. It's exciting every time. And I think the reason is because it's hard every time. Just because you've, made it to the tournament a lot of times doesn't make it easier the next year. You have to work for it and you have to earn it every year. So I really hope our athletes kind of get to enjoy that moment. The selection show day is really fun. We have, staff that attends and donors and alum and parents. So it's really kind of a great event. And I hope they enjoyed it on Monday.
Absolutely. You mentioned the number of times that you've been selected, specifically the last 8 years. What do you think has led to the consistency in your program to allow the Terps to be selected, with this much consistency, I guess?
Yeah, this last run, the 8, 9, 10 years, it's like we've brought in student athletes that are obviously talented in gymnastics, but the caliber of people that they are is what is driving this culture, right? And they're passing it down. This is becoming a standard of how we train and how we use recovery in the weight room and how hard we work. That's being passed down from great leadership and great culture on our team, and that's led to that consistent success, I think.
What are some of the characteristics you look at when you're bringing in athletes to continue that culture? Obviously, you can teach people things, you can pass that down, but what traits do you look for when you're bringing people into Maryland to continue that legacy?
Yeah, I love that question. We have a saying that we say to recruits, like, we're looking for good gymnasts, but we're looking for great people, because you can do a lot more with great people than you can with just good gymnastics, right? So what we're looking for is people who want to be a part of a team, we first, not me, and that want to be a part of a family style culture, that want to grow and learn, that want to get better, that also want to leave their mark on our program, right? Come in here and take a program to the next level and break school records and things like that, and leave the program better than you found it. I also really like looking for student athletes that are very academic focused, right? We have an outstanding academic university here, that. And I just feel like student athletes who come in and are driven in their careers, it's such an easy segue for them to be driven in their sport and how they train and how they practice, the same way they approach their academics, their schoolwork, and their future careers.
How do you think bringing in people like that with some of those qualities and with some of those, goals helps set student athletes up for success after gymnastics and after Maryland?
Yeah, so two things. Well, one, how you do, we were saying how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you're academically and career driven, you're going to be same detail oriented when you, like we said, when you train, when you go to the weight room, when you go to the recovery, things like that. And then that gives you the skill set for life when you leave here, right? If you have that discipline and focus and drive and you know how to work hard and put in long hours, you combine that with the other great thing that Maryland gives you is one of the best educations in the country. All of our top 15 public university rankings and 75 majors in the top 25. It's like you combine the work ethic and skills that we teach here being on the gymnastics team with the academic rankings at Maryland. There's nothing you can't achieve when you leave here.
Before we get back to the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland.
served with handmade toppings, including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns. Shout out gluten-free buns. Because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here is more Under the Shell.
Going back to some of that consistency, some of the, the finishes you guys have had with your time as head coach, you guys seem to always finish around, that top 25 mark in the country. What is it going to take, you think, to, get past that and, get some finishes in the top 15, top 10? How do you kind of see, obviously you've had so much consistency. How do you see yourself continuing to improve on that?
Yeah, those rungs get harder and harder to climb, but it's progress. I always say it's like never exactly linear. There's progress, and then there's some plateaus, and then progress again. And I remember taking over the program as a first year head coach. I think the year before that, we were 48th in the country. And, at that moment, the goal was like, can we become a consistent NCAA tournament team? And that's top 36. So just getting in the 36 was the goal. And then as we started to achieve that, you raise the bar a little bit, you move it to top 25. And over the last, I think we've been ranked in the top 25 at least 1 week, 8 out of the last 11 years. So that's become the kind of the new standard. So now we're looking for athletes and team that wants to push to that next, to get into the teens, and then eventually to become a top 16 seeded team going to the NCAA tournament. But it's just steady work in every aspect, in the gym, in the weight room, training room, in recruiting on the road with the coaching staff, in developing our skill set as coaches, getting better. It's grinding every day to try to earn those goals and keep moving up the rankings.
I think, obviously I'm aware because I'm a journalist and cover the sports teams at Maryland, but how do you like to get the word out to people, in the Maryland community and, maybe some of the local communities and some of the younger athletes, that, hey, right around the corner in the DMV, Maryland Gymnastics has one of the, perennial top 25, top 30 teams in the country. What are some strategies you use to kind of advertise the Maryland Gymnastics program?
Well, what I think is really cool in this kind of new era that we're living in social media, and I know sometimes social media gets a bad rep, but it's been enormous for us to, kind of like you said, you have a whole new audience that you can contact. When you go back 10 years ago, you only have the traditional sources of marketing. It's TV, radio, billboards. That's kind of it. Now we have Instagram and TikTok and all these social media platforms where you can connect directly with a younger generation of fans. And that's who we love. We have fans that come out that are 8-year-old, 9-year-old gymnasts, and their parents come and bring them. It's a family friendly environment that you can come watch gymnastics. But what's really cool is that was never available before is fans can connect directly with the student athletes. You follow them on Instagram and you feel like you kind of know them, and they're doing a day in the life, or this is me going to treatment and this is me eating lunch, and you feel like you have a connection with that student athlete. Then you can come on the weekend and watch them compete. And if you look at our last home meet of the year, senior night, we had over 2,600 fans. I mean, it was the highest attended meet of the year, because throughout the season, all of our fans, local kids in the community and their parents, connecting with our student athletes, watching them on social media, and then coming to see them in person, maybe get their autograph after the meet. That's been really beneficial to us.
Super neat. I want to head back and talk about the regional again. Obviously, you guys have, I believe, 5 returners from last year competing in last year's regional who are competing in this year's regional. Maybe I'm off by a number or two there, but how are you looking for those gymnasts to kind of help lead the team heading into this year's, because they have that experience?
Yeah, and if you go back to last year's regional, it was our highest regional score in program history. And if we had been in, our score was so good. If we had been in any other regional site, we just happened to be in a tough bracket, but if we had been in any other regional site, we would have advanced to the Sweet 16. So what we talked about, I remember right when that meet was over, I thanked that team for setting that standard of how we approach a regional championship bracket. It was like that intensity that they competed with last year. is how we have to compete every time we get out there at a regional tournament. So having those 5 returning athletes, you got Sarah Seville set last year the highest bar score in program history at a regional, and Taylor Reck set the highest, or tied, I think, the highest vault score at a regional, and then Maddie Komorowski was NCAA regional beam champion. So having them all back, they know the standard at which the level that you have to be at when you go up against these teams in the NCAA tournament. And they just also happen to be our leaders, right? It's perfect. Like, they are our leaders in the gym, outside of the gym, and I expect them to be our leaders when we hit the floor in Lexington next weekend.
Absolutely. Obviously on the road for this, I want to go back and talk about another road trip you guys had this season out to UCLA, which has kind of become maybe a highlight, but also a low light for a lot of programs. Just the difficulty of, getting out there for the Big Ten. One of your weaker meets this year, what were your lessons that you guys learned for, going out west and maybe some things you do differently to help prepare the girls better for that meet?
Yeah, and so it's interesting that you bring that up. People talk about the travel, but it was not difficult to get the team amped up to travel to LA. The year before, going to Washington was a little tougher. It's the same 6-hour flight, but you didn't have the beautiful weather, and we didn't get to go to where did we go to? We went to what's the street, the famous street? We went to
God,
Rodeo. It was Rodeo.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
It wasn't hard to convince them to get excited to go to LA at the beautiful weather and go to Rodeo Drive. But yeah, I think they did a great job managing the travel and the sleep and all those things. And the environment was intense. Okay, so I think we had a good performance, but not our best. We got a little tight, maybe got a little nervous. But that's what helps us grow. Like, getting out there, being in front of 8,000, 10,000 fans, Ashton Kutcher sit in front row, right? Like, it changes how you compete. But that's what we've got to learn how to handle. And so I think that sets us up going to this regional. I told him, to be honest, this is probably the most intense environment that we'll see the entire year. Like I said, LA, and you got Jordan Childs last season. It's very popular out there, and like I said, all the celebrities are, I think Russell Wilson was there. And I mean, it was like, it's packed, right? So that helps what we called stretch. It stretches them. It stretches the ability of what they're able to handle, the pressure, the intensity, the fans, the celebrities, whatever it is. So when we go to this NCAA regional, it shouldn't be as intense as that. I mean, Kentucky will have a great crowd, but Kentucky's not in the meet with us. So we won't see as intense an environment as we saw on the road at LA. And I think that will help us with confidence going forward.
I think that's a really good positive to take away from that. It makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like, scheduling is super hard. It's why, a lot of other schools, specifically like women's lacrosse, will schedule a really hard, out of conference opponents. Obviously, this was in conference. So, hey, you have that really tough experience when you then get to postseason play. Maybe you didn't win all those games, but your athletes now know what it's like to perform in that environment. I assume that's mostly how you feel.
That's exactly right. We have kind of a joke that we say is like, the beam is 4 inches wide. Everybody knows that. But when there's 10,000 fans and Ashton Kutcher there, the beam feels 3 inches wide, right? Like, so, it everything gets a little small, but being able to deal with that is what we're taking from that meet. And we're going to use that when we go to NCAAs.
Very well. Those are the main important questions I have. I have one other question for you. Obviously, you competed way back in the day at UMass, but probably been a bit. If you had to fill in and step on the mat right now, what event in women's gymnastics do you think you'd be the best at?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Great question. I appreciate you saying back in the day. That really kicks it back there for me. But so some of my best events wouldn't translate. I was pretty good at pommel horse. That obviously wouldn't help me in women's gymnastics. High bar, I competed, and floor, but I think probably vault. Vault was one of my best events. I was fortunate enough to make finals in the conference and place on the podium my sophomore year. So I would say vault, because it's pretty much identical between men's and women's gymnastics. So if I could help anywhere, I would try to help vault. That being said, I would not be able to walk for a couple days afterwards if I did. So hopefully I don't have to sub in. I'm going to leave it to our team. They're the professionals now. And I'll just, I'll watch and help out in any way I can. But that's a great question. I wasn't expecting that.
All good.
I'll
No,
tell
very
you
well.
what I would never
Yeah.
come close to. I'm never getting on that balance beam. So it was not a sport for men. I'm impressed. You know, I've coached in college for, 23 years as an assistant head coach, and it still impresses me what they do on balance beam. And every year it gets harder and harder because we're upping the difficulty on beam, and we got a really great beam team this year, and I'm impressed with what they do, but you'll never catch me up there.
Very well. You said 4 inches usually. For you, I'm sure it'd feel like maybe 2 inches up there if you were. You'd be screwed.
Yeah, I'd be in trouble. And we got, when you watch Maddie and Joe and Emily do it, the beam looks like it's 4 feet wide. Like they're so good up there. They're so confident. I don't even want to think about me up there. It terrifies me just talking about it. Very
well. Well, we'll shift our focus and think about the upcoming regional next weekend. Thank you so much for hopping on, and we really appreciate your time, Coach.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy my time with you guys on Under the Shell.
Well, Coach Nelligan brought a lot more enthusiasm to that interview than Michael did to the intro, so we hope you guys enjoyed that. Interesting stuff from a coach in the postseason. Not something we can say a lot of at Maryland. Really quick, guys, not a ton of news this week, so we're going to just try to go through the quick hitters on the main sports before we really get in to the kind of nitty-gritty of the lacrosse teams. It's obviously that is the main deal. Let's start it out with men's basketball. The transfer portal has opened. Andre Mills, George Turkson, and Pharrell Payne all have been confirmed that they are coming back. 2 of those obviously matter a lot more than the other. Our good friend Harrison Rich. I don't think he was the first to report it, but he is who I saw tweeted out about the Mills news. And then Jeff Ehrman reported on the Pharrell Payne stuff. So obviously really good news for Buzz. We were kind of assuming that was going to be the case. But guys, if you had to guess, when you look at next year's roster, I have a preposition for you. How important on the team, 1 through 11 or whatever, however many players they have, do you think Andre Mills and Pharrell Payne will be? Michael, I will start with you with Mr. Payne. Where do you think he would, on a good team for Maryland next year, in terms of importance, not even in terms of just the best player, where do you think he would stack up?
I'm going to put him as number 2. I think number 1 is clearly Baba. I think this team will be dictated on how this highly touted freshman comes in and plays, but you saw how the Terps looked without Payne this season, and it was not pretty. Even in the early season when the Terps were dropping games, Payne was the lone bright spot on this team. And when he went down in that Michigan game and it was done for the year, this team just absolutely crumbled. Their paint presence wasn't there. Kyle Metcalf, sure, he had a couple good plays here and there, but that was never supposed to be the role that he played in. And a team is always a lot stronger when you have that anchor down low for them. And I think Payne coming back and being that anchor and being that proven veteran for this team, just looking at who's going to be coming back, he's going to be the senior leader, that veteran presence for the squad. So very important for this team. I'm putting him at number 2. Andre Mills, I'm going to put him at number 4. I think who they bring in during this offseason is going to slot in at that number 3 spot. There's a guy from a local school who entered the portal today, so we can talk about it in a little bit, but I'm putting Payne at 2. Yep, you got it, Brendan. Payne at 2 and Andre Mills at 4.
I'm going to say that's a measly take, Michael. I think Pharrell Payne is the most important person.
Okay.
He'll be number 1. He's going to be a veteran. He's going to be a person who's now in his 5th season of college basketball. However good Baba ends up being, you need a veteran to win college basketball games, especially we've seen in March. Take UConn, who just upset Duke in the Elite Eight. Tyrus Reed was the best player on that court, and the reason he was is because he'd been there before. Cam Boozer looked very good, but the reason UConn won that game was because of a veteran big man who was unstoppable.
And because Duke's point guard turned into a cucumber.
Whatever. But the point is, someone like that in college basketball can turn a game. Do I think Terrace Reed will be a great NBA player? Probably not. Will Pharrell Payne be an incredible NBA player? Probably not. They would be in the league already if that was the case. But college basketball is a special place for big men who are very physical and dominant. The question is, how much has Pharrell Payne improved his game since this year? He looked very good to start the year. If he can make improvements to his game, he'll be even better. Not sure how much that's going to really happen given his injury, but a lot of it is going to come with play style. He looked really good at Texas A&M last year, and when he was hot, he was able to get some of those double-doubles. He could turn games for them, especially when he has a lot of help and the defensive focus is not on him. I think Andre Mills, I think 4 is a good spot. I think 5, I think for Andre, it depends a ton on the transfers and what his role is going to end up being. Will he have to do more ball handling? Will he be a more defensive player? Hard to rank him, but I would say Pharrell Payne, 1. If I had to put a number on it, Andre Mills, 5. Sam, do you differ?
I think you guys slotted them in right around where I would. I think I'd probably put Payne actually 3rd. I think, Brendan, you make a lot of good points, but I think what you're going to get out of Pharrell Payne is kind of the way I look at it, right? Like, he's going to be a solid, reliable player. Baba is obviously, I think, the swing factor in this team's season. And then I think whatever transfer point guard you get is really going to have a huge impact. So not currently on the roster, but I would put them 2. Andre, I think 4 or 5 is a good place to slot in. It really just depends on the type of leap he makes, right? If he continues on the path that he was the second half of this season, then he's going to be, a top 4 player on this team. But I don't want people to forget that for the first half of the year, this guy was not playing at the pace and the level he was. Development is not linear, right? We say that all the time. Guys don't just go on a straight path of their trajectory. So I'd imagine that there's probably a middle ground, but if he manages to match that level or even improve on it, this is a player who obviously can really have a huge impact on Maryland's team.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
but-
Sam, you mentioned bringing in a transfer guard. Now, what if I told you there's a guard who's going to be in the transfer portal, grew up in Maryland, has a Maryland Terps tattoo on his arm, played at Georgetown the past 2 seasons. We
Yes, it
passed
does.
over him a couple off seasons ago to get Jacoby Gillespie, and now he's back in the portal, dropped 19 on Maryland way back earlier this year. Malik Mack. And that seems like that could be a move. That seems like that could be a move.
Hypothetically, it'd be awesome. I think the fact that he didn't come here the first time would make me think maybe he's not. Obviously, he has the Maryland tattoo. He grew up a big Terps guy. Coaching staff has turned over, sure. I don't know. I don't totally buy it. He looked like he did not like Maryland very much when he played the Terps earlier this year as a member of the Hoyas. Obviously, that can always change in the transfer portal with the dollar signs, but I don't buy it quite yet, but it would be very cool to see. I think it would be a nice homecoming for him for sure. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he'd be a good pickup. One guy I want to mention who I've seen some buzz, no pun intended, around is Buffalo's Daniel Freitag, an All-MAC honorable mention. He averaged almost 20 points a game and shot 36% from 3. Granted, he'd be on his 5th team in 5 years, so definitely a bit of a retreat, but I think he would be a nice pickup. The portal's really starting to open up. I think we're going to see more and more names connected with Maryland. They're obviously going to be in a spot where they have money to offer, right? Like you really have only committed to paying 3 guys at a high level next year. So I think that there's a variety of players that I would look at that could be nice pickups. Florida State out of Bowie. He averaged sophomore Martin Somerville. He's in the portal. He's kind of a scoring guard. He averaged 8 points a game this year. I think he could be a nice bench pickup. You're kind of looking, I think, for different guys, but we don't really know Buzz's strategy, right? We haven't seen him recruit a first-year transition, just bring in all my old players from Texas A&M. So it'll be fascinating to see what he does. Let's move on to women's hoops. Nothing too crazy in the news there. No big transfer portal news. Obviously, we had Alucci on last week. I think that this Final Four, one point I wanted to make, this Final Four, I think, has showed how important. I mean, the 1 seeds have always had a huge advantage, right? But talent and veteran talent is so critical, right? Like, look at the best players on the teams this year. Maddie Booker, a junior. Lauren Betts, a senior. Azzy Fudd, a senior. right? South Carolina is always nasty, but Raven Johnson, a veteran, Tessa Johnson, a veteran, right? Like you have to have high level, 5-star peak talent players, I think, and older players. So definitely, I mean, Maryland has tried to follow that recipe, I think, but definitely something to pay attention to when you're watching what Maryland does this offseason. I think that'll be a very telling sign. Let's
Yeah.
move off of, really quick, I forgot to mention Brianna Williams.
Brianna Williams, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
Yeah.
Not huge.
She's not a big
that was
deal.
that
Yeah.
kind of was expected. She was really underused at Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm
She's
sure
the
she'll
first-
play a lot more minutes somewhere else.
Yeah, she'll probably go to like, I don't know, the Mountain West. She's from Montana, I think, originally. So probably somewhere out there, a lower level conference, the Big Sky maybe, and just kind of dominate as a post player. I don't think we really saw a career here in College Park.
Great. I'm going to book it right now. Sam Jane says Brianna Williams in the Big Sky. Tune in to see if that prediction comes true.
Give it to me. Put it on the board. Let's move on to next. My last prediction was Maryland men's lacrosse season was finished, cooked, over, donezo, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it. I'm not coming off that prediction. I'm not going to recant my judge decisions like some courts do. I'm going to stick with my principles, with what got me here. Despite a 14-8 win over Michigan, obviously Eric Spanos was elite, career high 8 goals in that game. Their offense really bounced back. Brendan, how important do you think this game was for them? You talked about it last week that they really kind of dominate Michigan, but just to get the season back on track, was this kind of a bounce back, you think, or do you think it's just kind of a sign of the opponent?
I mean, it's a really good win because they scored a ton of goals. Spanos had the best game of his career. He was unstoppable, had 8 incredible goals. But guys, they beat Michigan, a team that hasn't won since February 10th. Their wins are to Mercyhurst, Marquette, and Detroit Mercy, and they have some not so they've played some very good teams, but they've had some pretty some ugly losses, I would say. A loss to Lehigh at home, really blown out against Denver, Harvard, Notre Dame. I mean, sure, some of the better teams in the country, they have not really been able to play teams that close. Hey, Maryland looked incredible in that game, but at the end of the day, it really, they won that game, but it was on the back of Spanos, who played really, really well. Rupel had 6 saves on 14 shots. If they'd played a team where they hadn't controlled the ball, obviously Maryland had a ton of possession in this game. If they'd played a team where they were not able to do that as much, it may have been a different game. Maryland really controlled the face-off battle, something they need to do. Jonah Carrier had a bounce-back game after a tough showing at Penn State in the first half. So got some guys to kind of get some momentum, get back on track. Johnson scored 2, Chris Lyon scored 2. They're back on track. Jack Schultz scored a goal after, he was out earlier this season with some injuries, but he's been back. Get some guys back on track. But, the thing with the Big Ten lacrosse right now is only one team is undefeated. Penn State's 2-0. So the rest of the league is kind of open. Maryland could easily win the regular season of the Big Ten, but it's not going to be easy. They play Ohio State 9th in the country, Rutgers 12th, Johns Hopkins 14th. And as I said last week, they haven't demonstrated they can beat highly ranked teams. They lost to every ranked opponent they've played so far this year. If they can go 2-1 the rest of the season, and win the Big Ten championship or be competitive in the Big Ten championship, you're probably still looking at a Maryland team that's going to could make the NCAA tournament. They have to win these 2 of the next 3 games. Is it possible? Yeah. Rupel's going to have to play well. The defense is going to have to play well. And Eric Spanos doesn't have to score 8 goals, but they're going to have some more. You're going to have the cohesion they had in the Michigan game to win. Is it impossible? No. Do I think it'll happen? I think they go 1-2 to finish the year, but it's a John Tillman coach team. We've seen him have slow starts in earlier years and then peak in late May. And so that's obviously always the goal. But the early on this team, they just, as we've said, not coming out with enough energy in games and also not able to close games are 2 things you don't want. So
yeah,
they control some destiny though. They control some destiny.
control their destinies a bit much, I think, maybe.
Well, no, they control some destiny. I didn't say that. They control some destiny. They win these next
Yeah.
3 games. They're in
Yeah,
the
they'll be
yeah.
in the tournament.
They'll be a one-loss Big Ten team with some bad out-of-conference losses early in the year.
We probably should have started with, I said, kind of the main sports. The main sport right now, or the main team, I should say, should be the number 1 team in the country. That's the Maryland women's lacrosse team.
Clap it up for Maryland women's lacrosse.
Shout out Kathy Reese. I mean, this woman just absolutely grinds out year after year. Productive, talented, and phenomenal teams. This year, probably one of her best, at least record-wise. They're 12-0, only undefeated power conference team. Next closest team is Michigan, who's second in the country. They're 9-2. So I think that kind of says a lot about the squad that Kathy's got going. They actually haven't played super well recently. They've been outscored 8-1 in the final period in their 2 wins last week, according to the Diamondback. Beat Penn State 14-13. I mean, it is a ranked win. Obviously, you take those any day you can. But I don't think that that's maybe the standard that they've wanted to hold to themselves. And then beating Johns Hopkins,
it's a huge win.
That's a huge, huge win, 15-12. Your girl, Lauren LaPointe, scored 7 goals. So a couple of standout showings from a few lacrosse players. Mike, you covered this team did you do field hockey or
you covered field hockey freshman year?
Field hockey, that's right, my bad.
Ball nowhere know that. Come on, Sam.
Yeah, it's my bad. Hand up. Brendan, you've covered Kathy for a while since you got to college. We said before the year this didn't feel like her most talented team, but I guess just how would you pinpoint why they've been able to get off to such a tremendous start? Like, why is this at its core? What makes this the number 1 team in the country?
Yeah, I think it's simple. I think on the field, this team has the most cohesion of any team. Do they have the most talented roster in the country? Probably not. Is the way their offense has been playing been one of the best in the country? Yeah, and it's because the pieces on this team work really well together. I think everybody came into this year saying, hey, Corey Edmondson is probably going to be this team's leading scorer. And obviously Lauren LaPointe has taken that role. But it's because when you have Christian Shanahan and Keely Block all on the offensive side of the ball, the 3 of them, really all 4 of them are demanding so much attention that, and any given night, one of them is going to be that breakout star. And it's LaPointe's been having such a good season. It's been her more than it hasn't. But I think the cohesion of this team has been really successful. I think the other thing is that JJ Soriano has been playing incredible. The Johns Hopkins games, she didn't have her highest save percentage, but had some very clutch saves, and that's really all you need. Penn State game was her worst game of the season. She allowed 13 goals on 20 shots, only had 7 saves. By far the worst game of her season. But that's the type of thing where good teams win games. Yeah, they got outscored in the 4th, but they didn't totally collapse. They were able to still come away with the win. So at the end of the day, you got to look at that and say they played one of their worst games of the season, and they beat a top 25 team in the country in a game that they had a lot of pressure on them because they said if they won, Stanford already lost earlier in the week, UNC had already lost earlier in the week. They knew that if they won, they were going to be the number 1 team in the country. They pulled through and got that win. They faced Rutgers this weekend. Yeah, what's up?
One thing I'll say too, you talked about they knew that the 1 seed or the number 1 ranking was coming.
Yeah, number 1 ranking, yeah.
I like that this team has not been afraid to embrace expectations. Christian Andriola's did a really good story on, they're not afraid of being compared to the 2019 team. I think a lot of squads would probably be like, we're not really thinking about it. We're not really looking at it. We're our own team, yada, 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 PR. We all know that teams look up and, know and understand what the history of their programs is. And again, Lauren LaPointe said, I don't think it's really a distraction. I think it's more of a motivation. We look up to that 2019 team, and we always strive to be better. I think they're more of a motivator than a scary thing. I think that that's really cool. I think the fact that they've been willing to embrace that, they know how good they are. They're not afraid of their record. They're not afraid of the expectations that come with it. I think that probably says something about what Kathy thinks about this team, right? If, she's talking to them about that 2019 squad, if, they're using it in points of comparison, she obviously has a lot of confidence in this group, and why shouldn't she? They're playing excellent lacrosse. Brendan said it. They have Rutgers this week. So we'll see how they get back onto the field. Michael, the team who played this week, tough series last weekend, but they bounced back. The men's baseball squad. Last week you said you thought you might be willing to get your gavel out. They did not win the series against USC. They did snag one game, and they just beat Richmond. So 2-2 week. Probably not at a point where they can be treading water. Schedule does lighten up a little bit, Mike, but panic meter right now, 1 through 10, 10 being the gavel is officially coming down on this Matt Swope season. Where do you stand? I know it'll probably be nothing less than a 3.
The gavel is staying in my pocket this week. I'm not putting it down for this team. If I had to put panic meter, probably a 5. Obviously, it's not a great start to conference play. You dropped your first
Say that again. Spell that out. FIVE.
It's a 5.
This many? How many ends on a hand? You're insane.
We're not a visual podcast, but both me and Brendan are flabbergasted.
Well, so this team has played the 7th hardest strength of schedule in college baseball so far this season. It's going to get a lot lighter after this. They have 7 conference series left. Just looking at the schedule here, Ohio State coming up this weekend. Yes, it's on the road. Yes, Ohio State is 14-3, but they're 92nd in RPI right now. This Dirty Terps team is 47th right now. So per the RPI, they should be better. Then they're Indiana,
What you guys say?
Mike.
Iowa, 91st. Michigan State, 84th. Michigan, 52. That'll be a good series. Michigan's been a little bit of a house of horrors for the Terps. Rutgers, 142.
Rutgers.
230. And to go over the teams the Terps have played these past few weeks, number 1, UCLA. Number 8, USC. Number 12, West Virginia. Number 14, Virginia. Like, they've played a competitive schedule. Yes, they're 1-10 in quad 1 games this season. That is not great, and they have to improve there when you're playing the top competition. But
Mike,
I still think you're calling this season a success if they make it to the Big Ten tournament, which is what they haven't been able to do.
No, but that shouldn't be the standard. That's my point.
No, it definitely shouldn't be the standard. And we were given pro team comps to the Dirty Terps earlier today, me and Sam, where I said they were like the Bengals, where they had a really good few years run that they just haven't been able to match the past few years. Sam called them the Cleveland Browns, which I thought was incredibly disrespectful.
No, the Bengals take's good. The Browns takes is a
Michael
Browns.
had a great. I want to read this text that Michael had because this was really strong.
This podcast is so deep into the baseball team that they are texting about us on the side, giving comps. This is how much we care.
Bengals is a good comp. Had a nice couple-year run, but they just can't replicate it again. Quoting Michael Howes now. And it's like they have the pieces. Preseason, you always think this team will work. But the common denominators, defense, pitching, always fail them with the endless rumors that the coach, Swope, and Zach Taylor should be fired. I said, nice analysis from Mikey Scoops.
Yeah, I mean, Swope is in
they're the New York Giants, kind of.
With the media coverage we give them, they're basically in the New York media. We are the sole driver of the Maryland baseball.
I am not worried. I've never been less worried.
Mike, let me ask you this. Let me go on a tangent here really quick. Did you see the Syracuse women's basketball coach complaining about being in the Yukon region every year and being like, oh my God, I have to play Yukon every year? This is what you're doing right now and saying, like, yeah, my point is if you want to, be a very good team, you have to beat other very good teams.
Yeah.
The plain stat is whatever. They're 1-10 in quad 1 games. If they the excuse of they played tough competition, understandable. Sure. Do they have a shot to make the Big Ten tournament because they're playing worse teams now? Sure. When they get to the Big Ten tournament, in order to have any success, they're going to have to beat UCLA and beat USC. So it's like, sure, great if they make the Big Ten tournament, but whatever.
Omaha. Anything can happen in Omaha, Make the Big Ten tournament. You got to fight.
You know what you need. You know what you need to. You know you need to win in Omaha, Mike.
What?
Good starting pitching.
Yeah.
I mean,
Michael, where does
they were down 11-2 after 4 innings the Friday night game against USC. That can't happen on Friday night with Lance on the mound.
That game was deflating though. Didn't they come back in that game? And
they somewhat came back, but it was Was it
a 1-run? Is it a 1-run loss?
Yeah, it was.
I thought it was 11
Michael, where does Richmond sit on the RPI? I can
Richmond?
actually tell you. They're 250th.
And where does Maryland sit after beating them? After blowing them out, where do they sit? Did they go in the
Maryland
right direction or the
actually
wrong
went
direction?
down in RPI
How
today.
is that possible? That doesn't make
Maryland
any
was
sense.
38th earlier today, and now they're 47th after a win.
Yeah.
After a win.
Wait,
After-
they dropped 10 spots?
Yeah.
What? How much were the Terps supposed to beat them by?
By the way, UNC Wilmington not on RPI's rankings. That's how irrelevant of a program they are.
They're 102. They're 102.
Oh, they are? Okay,
They're
I'll
102.
search up. Sorry, my command F wasn't.
Sam doesn't know how to use Command F. It's 2026. He's been a journalist for 15 years. He can't use Command F.
Tough seats.
I mean,
Let's
we'll
move
see what
off.
happens. I'm
Let's talk.
hopeful that
Let's
we
talk softball.
can more dirty
No,
Terps.
let's not. Let's really
Soft,
not.
no, let's let's talk softball for 1 second. Anybody softball?
Yeah, softball.
Was Judy Smith lurking in the shadows at the softball game too?
They're 13-20. They are 1-11 in conference play, and they got swept. They got swept at Wisconsin this past weekend. Last year, they won 3 conference games, so they're kind of on pace to match that. But they had a pretty horrific losing streak during the middle of all that. We'll see what ends up happening with them, but I don't know what to say about them. They're the women's soccer of the spring, except women's soccer has a really good recruiting class.
Yeah,
You know what's great, guys, is we'll never
coaches.
talk about Maryland women's soccer, maybe ever again on this podcast. This might be the last ever mention.
Two shady former coaches too. This is where we're at, you know. Brendan, I don't have much of an intro this week. Usually I cook up something fun. Let's just take it away with Terrific Terp, man. Give the people what they want.
Final note, we talked about it with Coach Nelligan. Maryland Gymnastics will be competing in the Lexington Regional this weekend, so maybe they can, for the first time under Nelligan, make it to the second weekend, but should be exciting. All right, Terrific Terp, let's go. Sam mentioned that 2019 women's lacrosse team. Well, this Terrific Terp is actually on that 2019 team, and she recently, a couple of years ago, came back to College Park to join the women's lacrosse staff as the Director of Operations, as the role she serves currently. The Terrific Terp this week is Caroline Steele, and she grew up in Severna Park and in high school won MVP of the Under Armour All-American game during her senior year. Steele obviously stayed in DMV for college and made an immediate impact her freshman year at Maryland. In her first 3 seasons with the Terps, she started all 23 games, all 3 years, her first 3 years. Freshman year, in 2016, she scored 38 goals. Sophomore year, 55, with 7 of those coming in the national title game that Maryland won that year. Junior year, she upped her goal total again, scoring 59. In senior year, she did miss 4 games due to injury, but still scored 53 goals, including the first 2 goals of the 2019 title game, which Maryland won, which Sam mentioned earlier in this episode. During her time at Maryland, she was named to 2 All-American teams and was also a 2-time Thornton Award nominee. She was also named to the Maryland's All-Decade team. After she left UMD, she joined the St. Joseph's Women's Lacrosse and Coaching staff, where she spent 4 years there before coming back to UMD. She started as the Director of Player Development at Maryland and is now the Director of Operations for Women's Lacrosse. The future Hall of Famer and current Women's Lacrosse pro is this week's Terrific Terp.
And another great Terrific Terp to round up this episode. As always, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, anywhere you find your podcasts. Appreciate everybody for listening, and go get a Catalyst hot dog this week.
You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast. After all these years, still the best in America.